Hello, everybody. It's John from VETtoCEO and Folla Capital. I'm here for another interview with another veteran turned entrepreneur, and his name is Will Cunningham. How you doing, Will?
I'm good, John. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I know we were chatting before we hit record. I know you're probably busy these days, so I certainly want to thank you on behalf of people listening to this for taking some time out of what is probably a very busy day to share some of your experiences for the benefit of others. So I want to thank you on behalf of them.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks. I look forward to it.
All right, let's just cut to the chase then. I like to start with this. Like, just describe your company. What kind of company do you now own? And just generally, just describe it.
Yeah, so I own Square Cow Movers in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we are a full service residential and commercial long distance and local moving company. And so we'll move anybody from North Carolina to any other state. We're licensed all across the country. And we'll also relocate anybody from any other state to our home state here in North Carolina. So we love serving folks here in the community. That's why I got into this and transitioned from service. And so there's a lot of great aspects to this industry. And if anybody out there is familiar with Raleigh, North Carolina right now, it's probably one of the fastest growing metropolitans in the country. The thesis is that the market can support another professional moving company here. So that's what it is.
Yeah, yeah, good stuff. So tell me about your background and kind of what you did in the military.
Yes, I was a ROTC guy out of Virginia. I started out as a cavalry officer and went to Korea and enjoyed my early assignment there, but wasn't really impressed with the culture and the average service member that I was serving alongside, and thought maybe there's another spot for me. And I interacted with some of the special operations folks over there in Korea and said, hey, that might be a place for me. And so I quickly went to Special Forces Assessment and Selection and went through the qualification course around the 2007 timeframe. So it was about 3 years into my career. And I served in special operations for the remainder of my time. 22-year career and about 18 years serving in the special operations community, primarily out of 7th Special Forces Group, both in North Carolina and Florida, but a lot of time in other headquarter organizations that are at Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Awesome, awesome. So when you were coming at the tail end of those years, what the hell went through your mind about what to do next after the military, and kind of connect those dots for us on thinking about it to where you are now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate that, the time. And I'm trying to be brief, but there's so much there, I think, for me personally. So I was very fortunate in the last 3 to 4 years of my career to serve as the professor of military science at North Carolina State University. So I ran an academic department and was a full-up professor there at NC State here in Raleigh. And that really, when I made the decision to take that assignment, I knew that I was going to retire at that time, 20-ish years in the career, in my career. And that was intentional, and I knew that was going to happen. And I was ready, and family and just all the deployments and long hours spent grinding it out. I was ready, and I knew I wanted a second career somewhere else. And so when I was at NC State, I had the opportunity to get it back into school, if you will. So I started the MBA program at NC State while I was teaching and running that department. And I really immediately began to establish a network of folks across corporate America, Fortune 500, small, medium-sized businesses, what have you, just trying to understand what would be there for me as I transition. And I went to Red Hat and IBM and Schneider Electric and SAS and a lot of the major players here in the Raleigh area. I didn't go to Eli Lilly. I should have gone to Eli Lilly, a big pharma company here, but I went there looking for, hey, I know this culture I've been a part of in the special operations community. I know what I'm looking for, thrive in a team environment. I feel like I'm a great contributor. And I found good teams to join and some good opportunities, but nothing really spoke to me. And all of a sudden, at some point, I got connected through like one of my 500 cups of coffee I had with different people. And somebody said, hey, you know what? You should look at this thing called ETA, as we know it, Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition. And they were like, you could buy or acquire a small, medium-sized business. You can create this culture you're looking for. And it was like immediate light goes on, and I'm thinking, okay, that sounds really appealing. Let me go learn about it. And I spent probably 2 years, to be honest with you, through professional education at NC State, the MBA program, and personal education through books like they call it the Bible, Walker Dibbles, Buy Them Pilled, the HBR Guide to ETA, E-Myth, Traction by Gino Wickman on how to run it. So I was already thinking about how I'm going to run this business. I don't even own one. And Acquiring Minds, which I have to mention, which is a podcast. If you're out there and you're thinking about ETA, that is one of the most valuable resources I have found in this process. And I got just super psyched and invested in this becoming my next professional career / life, and how I impact the future for my family and for the community. And I love to talk about my personal values and how those were so influential in defining how I went about my search. So I'm going to pause here, Tom, because that was a lot, but let me know what direction you want to go in.
No, but had you heard of ETA before that person said that? Was that on your radar screen
No.
for an option? No,
It didn't even register that small business or even medium-sized business ownership was a legitimate option. I think, a lot of folks in the service just maybe have this automatic assumption that, okay, I'm going to retire from 20 years. Now I got to go find my next 20-year gig somewhere. And that needs to be in a company where I'm going to be a manager of people, because that's what I did when I retired or transitioned, whichever may be the case. And the last 2 years, I've just realized like, oh no, that doesn't have to be it at all. You can do 3 different things, and they don't have to include one single next career. You could there's so much opportunity out there. And I need to, at some point, we need to talk about this recruiting work that I do for a niche recruiting service too, because it's very much tied to my illuminating all of the opportunities that existed that I had no idea about. So
yeah,
talk about that.
The tease for me. Yeah, we'll get to that. Make sure we get to that. So the light bulb goes off. You read a few books, and then you go down this path of ETA, or Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition. Can we talk about that experience in a nutshell? Kind of what met your expectations along that path?
Yeah.
And what kind of blew you away or didn't meet your expectations?
Yeah.
For better or for worse?
Yeah. John, I need to start with your VETtoCEO program first. I'll be honest with you. When I first talked to, it was a local veteran connection, a guy that's in finance and private equity here in Raleigh, who was the first guy to plant the ETA seed for me. Then I talked to a couple of my former soft teammates who were doing it in real life. At that point, it was a fantasy for me. And they further assured me that, oh yeah, this is definitely up your alley. And I got connected to you in the VETtoCEO program very early, which I cannot say enough about what you, and I don't think Mike gets enough credit, so I'm going to mention his name, but what you guys are doing and just how impactful that was for me, a confidence and educational level. And there are things that you guys taught me that I didn't learn, because I wish I had done them differently as I stood up this business I have now. But nonetheless, it was a very solid foundation for me to launch into my search with confidence. And so I just want to say thank you for what you guys are doing out there virtually in Wilmington and what have you. I think like all the time or something, but I just want to say thanks for that. Let's start there. Really.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for the kind words. Appreciate that. That's not why we do these videos, guys, but appreciate the kind words.
Yeah. And VETtoCEO was great. I was also very fortunate to be a fellow of the Special Operations Transition Foundation, SOTF. And that was about a year-long kind of introspective journey for me about who I was in service, who I want to be, transitioning, what's important to me. And it didn't redefine who I am by any means, but it really helped me focus on what I wanted to achieve and how I could get there through ETA. And so that's another great program that I just need to mention, because that was a year of like professional coaching with, personality tests and just guidance on how to think about it, how to interview, how to structure yourself, both in personal platforms and professional things like LinkedIn and what have you. And then a bunch of networking support that they really provided, as well as access to companies to understand what's going on out there in the real world as it is. And then one other program that I want to mention is Owners in Honor, as run by a former service colleague of mine, Pat Flood, doing phenomenal work, trying to get more veterans into business ownership. Because as we all know, there are so many businesses that are transacting new owners, be it private equity or individual searchers, just because of the baby boomer generation that's retiring. And seemingly a large percentage of the current generation doesn't really want to run small business America, but it's so impactful. And veterans are so well equipped from our experiences and leadership capacities and abilities to step in and really those great businesses and those reputations and continue to foster them and grow them into the future. So those those were some of the main building blocks that I use, but I'll pause there again because I just keep rambling.
Well, appreciate you sharing those. Yeah, we know Patrick well, and he's doing some good things over there. What, but given the help you got, some things probably met your expectations as you went on your journey, and other things probably hit you in the face, like stepping on a rake in the middle of the yard. Like, what were some of the pleasant or unpleasant things you learned during the journey, during your ETA journey?
Okay, yeah. Okay, so I don't know if you remember this, but I would like frantically called you on a Saturday, like randomly about a year ago, and was like, "Hey, John, I'm a VETtoCEO graduate. I'm out here about to buy a business, and I took your class, and I think I know what I'm doing, but now I'm in the due diligence phase, trying to submit this LOI, and I can't understand the financials well enough. And so I think I was intentional about my approach, but I was still needed a team of people to help. And like you were such a support and key member of that team. And we looked at the financials, and it was like a $2 million commercial residential fence company in Raleigh.
Yeah, fence company.
Right. And I was super excited about it because I had honed down, like I'm a niche specialty service. That's my industry, right? Like I knew early on, no e-commerce, no tech, no F&B. I knew that service, I served the nation for 22 years. Now I want to serve the community. And so service is who I am deep as a person. And so I knew that, okay, I'm going to find a service industry, while still remaining somewhat industry agnostic because I had bounded my search geographically to be here in the Raleigh area or central North Carolina, really. So I guess all that to say, what's the point is that I wasn't ready, like probably from a financial standpoint. I didn't have an SBA approval yet. This was a $2 million company. The broker could sense that I was trying to get into the game, but wasn't really ready. So I think I risked a little bit of personal reputation on how ready I was to be to acquire a business. And as much as your class taught me and my reading some books and things, I didn't build my team right out the gate. And so I did a bunch of networking, but I just had not built my team correctly. That's I think you have an organization that does and supports folks to do that. And so does Pat out at Owners in Honor. And so I would just tell folks, like, really make sure you got your team set. Because even if I was ready to take that down, I didn't have a lawyer ready to help me review. I didn't have a CPA ready to help me look at it. So I wasn't ready. I thought I was, but
you eventually got there though, obviously. Look, and I'm so glad you said that because I'm not trying to lead the jury here, but I can't tell you, one of the pet peeves we have at VETtoCEO is how little that's talked about. Like one of the first things we need to do is build a team if we're going to go buy a company.
Yeah.
It seems to be that a lot of the I'll call it noise you hear out there almost makes you think like you're the searcher and you're supposed to know 842 things in order to buy a company, and that's your job. Like, there's no way someone knows all the things you need to know to buy a company. Hence, you need a team, right?
Yeah.
So glad you said that. That isn't exactly what you said, but want to comment on that? Anything to add there?
No, I think that's a big one. And I think another one is, I think I was a little bit so motivated, enthusiastic about the process, the end state, right? I can do this. And look at how successful I had been, not by myself though. Like in my career, I was just able to walk with giants in the soft community, and they are the reason that I grew and who I am today. And I made a lot of mistakes, and they helped me see those. And so I got a lot of people to thank. But just furthers this idea that you got to really have a team. We don't do anything by ourselves in the service. It's all, how do you win a fight, right? With your buddies, build your team. And the other thing I would say is you got to be realistic too. I distinctly remember a video call I had with somebody, and we were talking about a company, and it was about five mil in annual revenue. And the guy goes, "What industry experience do you have in this?" And I was like, "I don't have any." And I was so confident. I was like, "I don't have any industry experience." And he's, "You think they're just going to give you the keys to this $5 million company? I mean, industry experience." I was, "Yeah, I'm ready." I've read a bunch of books. I'm a VETtoCEO graduate. What do you mean I can't do this? But what that did for me was reframed a little bit. And I talked to some folks after that too. And I would have been, that's what opened me up to, maybe what I should do is look for a company that maybe isn't ready to sell yet, but will be in the future. Let me go be an operations manager and let me learn for a year and let me earn the trust of that organization. And maybe I can become the next owner of that if it were to work. And if nothing else, now I've gained industry experience in an industry that I'm interested in acquiring from. So that's another great model. I'll tell people, like, you can spend two years trying to find a perfect business in an industry that you really want to be in, and never find it in your geography, especially if you're not willing to relocate. You could go work for a company in an industry you care about or think you're interested in, and all of a sudden, maybe not that company, but you will be exposed to all of its like entities that are in that geography, and you'll be in the network. And you'll have experience. And now you're a really marketable searcher to brokers, to current owners, what have you.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Industry experience is actually one of the things a bank looks at as they underwrite SBA loans. And it's one thing veterans struggle with because, hey, I used to jump out of airplanes, with behind tanks. What kind of industry experience is that lining up with?
Yeah.
A lot of us have that challenge. We don't have time for it today, but I think one thing that I could throw out there is what I've seen with others is we have a buttload of experience making decisions.
Right.
Would you agree? Right.
Yes.
So making decisions and dealing with the world around us in challenging and not challenging, just everyday decisions. Some are harder than others. We have reps in decision making like no other civilian comparison.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily industry experience, but I would confess that in my experience as a business owner helping others, that is the number one thing that'll tank a company is your inability to make good decisions. So that's oftentimes a good comeback for someone who lays that line on you. I just wanted to share that with you and others. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. And to your point, I don't want anybody listening, and I don't have the perspective that you can't transition from service and be a business owner in any industry, because we can. Mm-hmm. It's not something I learned, but it's something I guess I would say is trust your intuition and faith. Like 20 years, in my case, 22 years of experience translates to business and life in general. And so to your point, the ability to do mission analysis and mitigate risk and link tactical daily operations to revenue and profit growth and strategy. Those things translate to business 100%. we have that head and shoulders above a lot of the 20 and 30-year-old searchers out there who maybe have industry experience, but they don't have any leadership, right? So they
Right.
know what's going on, but they don't know how to lead people. They don't know how to organize a team and set an operating schedule. And there's so many things that we are so well equipped to do in a lot of different industries out there in small, medium-sized businesses. Yeah, your point's valid.
No, I'm glad we captured that in this interview because it's such a big deal. Well, that's a good segue. So, what's been going on since you closed on the business? I know it hasn't been that long, but what's kind of gone right? What's been a challenge? What have you learned since you closed on the business?
I mean, there's been a lot of lessons learned. I would say for me, and I didn't share this, but this is a new company in Raleigh, and it is a franchise model. And we didn't talk about this, but for a long time, I was anti-franchise. I came out of the soft community because we love autonomy there and the ability to go on small teams and understand the rules and left and right limits and just let us go do stuff. And I just didn't want initially, I had these blinders on that there's no good franchise model for me because I can't run as fast as I want and I can't grow in the ways that I would want to. And I got my eyes opened that there are good opportunities. And so this is a new franchise startup. And one key thing to think about too. So there are 4 types of businesses that you can analyze from a risk perspective. The least risky business out there is a well-established franchise that's up and running with a great reputation, right? That's the least risky business you can own. The second least risky is an independent business that has a great reputation that's run by an owner or what have you. Next to that is starting a new franchise, right? It's more risky than an established business, but you have a framework, you have operating partner, you have marketing support, you have whatever given the industry, you just get some support from the franchise. And then starting a new startup, right? New independent startup. So that's as you go along that spectrum, they just get more risky. And when I started to think about this industry moving in Raleigh, it's growing so rapidly. The interest rates have been pretty high comparatively, and have been a lot of people in a depressed relocation market. And this isn't a technical industry. It doesn't have recurring revenue, which I really wanted in my search, but it has high ticket revenue per customer, which is great offset to that recurring revenue. And in my head, I'm thinking, I think we can do this. I can do this professionally. This gets me after the service that I want to get at, serving the community. And if I can do this successfully, I go from one of the more risky business profiles to the least risky profile for potentially holding and running or bringing in a veteran and transitioning ownership to them, right? So it just became very attractive in that way, to the point of what did I learn and everything. So I stood this up from the ground with franchise support, but there's a lot, right? What's the regulation? What's the certification process in the state? Creating the business entity, creating all the accounts, getting insurance. This is a high insurance related industry of business. It's something I did not think about, but people don't want to insure you to drive large trucks and valuable property when you have limited experience. And so that's something for folks to consider. You do your SWOT or PESTLE analysis or whatever your business framework is, or apply a military mission analysis against it. But you try to do as good of a job as you can in that, but there's still things you're going to learn, right? And I think just navigating that process has been illuminating for me. And you just got to be resilient. We are resilient from our service, and you have to carry that into business for sure.
Yeah. Okay, what about, I thought you were going to mention this, but you didn't. So I'm going to ask you. So what about employees, the guys that actually move the stuff? I mean, how have you dealt with that challenge? I understand, these days it's hard to keep people or track people. And also a subset of that is what we talked about before we started today. You did bring on someone you served with, right? So can you talk about
Yeah.
your lessons in those 2 areas?
Yeah. Early on when I was considering how I would approach ETA and business ownership and acquisition, I knew very early on that I was gonna do it from a team perspective. I was gonna partner with somebody in some capacity because I never did anything more in service, and I just one I wanted to share in this journey with somebody, but two, I wanted somebody else who maybe wouldn't have considered this to benefit, assuming we're successful, which we, we plan to be, but I wanted them to benefit just as much as I did. And so when I honed in on this industry and this business, I knew the right partner for me, who is my general manager now. We served together at NC State for a couple of years, and he's from Raleigh, and he's phenomenal. He's crushing it every day. And that has been the most impactful decision I've made. Wasn't how I got my SBA loan or who I used or what business account I established or what vehicles or insurance. It's none of that. It's the team. It's the people around you, right? And that's what matters. And so Tom Cheek is his name, and Tom's my GM. And what a phenomenal decision. Every day I think to myself, man, today would have been so much harder without Tom. And I appreciate it. Now, he did just break a piece of equipment on one of my new trucks yesterday, and I had to laugh because he's a former cavalry guy. And I was like, I knew this was going to happen, but no, we laughed about it. You got to take it in stride, but no, it's great. So Tom's there. He's an integral part of this with me. And we share obviously kind of key operations, sales and advertising, marketing, logistics functions of the business right now. And this is a tough industry to hire and retain folks. It's hourly pay and it's hard work. It is. This is like moving a household of furniture in 100 degrees in July. There's not a lot of people that want to raise their hand and say, I'm gonna go do that. So we have to motivate folks. We have to find folks that maybe need a second chance, who are young and impressionable, don't know what they want to do with their lives yet. We are recruiting in the National Guard and Reserve communities here in our area because we care about the service still and we want to impact those folks. And we think we can offer a great, stable means of employment for them. But it's tough. So finding the right folks, getting them in the right seats, to quote a very famous book, is the challenge here. We're a team of 7 folks. So that includes Tom and myself, but we're a small operation. And so we'll grow as we need to.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so glad you mentioned Guard and Reserve. I was just talking to another fellow colleague of ours about his business, and that's such a cool option you have as a veteran business owner, is you can connect with the local Guard and Reserve commands. And, there might be a dude in there that needs a job or needs some help, or that you bring in right away and have a different level of trust out of the gates. I'm glad you brought that up. We did mention a few things about leadership and the correlation with what you've done. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you feel strongly about? Because what we try to do, especially at VETtoCEO, is give folks confidence that, let me rephrase that, they just feel like it's such a gap between what they did in the military and small business. Like it's just too big of a leap for them, right? It's easy to grab the ring and just take the job. But what we've seen over the years, it really, the common denominator, what we hear in these stories is people figure out that leadership thing is the secret sauce. Is there anything else you want to add about that? I'm not trying to force something out of you, but anything else you'd like to add on about that?
Well, I think we talked about that, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think I would just tell folks, like, there are accountants, there are lawyers, there are CPAs, there are people that can help you with things that you probably are nervous about. And so to the point we've already made, I mean, your ability to use your intuition and experience to go in and assess a situation and lead a team with motivating and charisma and just common sense and some of the things you just intuitively know from serving, you will be successful. I don't want to forget this point though, because I think it's so important. It was for me, and I think it should be for others as well, is that you have to determine your why for entrepreneurship, probably more so than you need to if you're just going to try to go into corporate America. And what I mean by that is, why is it you're acquiring a business? What's the reason? You have to be honest with yourself. It could be for financial gain. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's a lot of businesses out there that could be grown and sold, and you could 10x a company and you could benefit financially from that massively. And if that's your why, that's fine, but that needs to guide your search into what you're looking for. For me, it was never about necessarily money. Of course, everybody wants to be successful, but it was about continuing to serve and finding a vehicle to do that through, and, finding a business that met some other criteria, but it was never really about making a bunch of money. And I just, thinking back and talking to people, there's a lot of folks that are thinking about entrepreneurship, but maybe don't really know why yet. And I would tell folks, you got to look inside and figure that out. So for me, for Square Cow Movers, I have 3 goals. That's to serve the community, to grow leaders, and to invest locally. And so everything we're doing is really geared towards that. The business is the business, and it will likely be successful, but that's what I'm here to do. And so it's not to 10x this company and sell it in 5 years. I don't have that goal. Honestly, I'm not probably done at making acquisitions. This is probably one company and a holding company that I plan to build vertically here in the Raleigh area. So I want to say that and make sure folks really are honest about it, because once you've done that and you know your why, it will literally light your path to what you're looking for. And so I think that's just really important for folks to think about.
That's good stuff, Will. I'm glad I asked you one more time about that. And, I would argue the flip side's true too. A lot of guys like you, they take the job, they get assigned a cubicle in a sea of cubicles in some big company, and they can't continue to do those things, continue to serve the way they want to serve.
Yeah.
They just kind of get frustrated being put in a box, right, in a big company, and they got that lifelong, career-long ability to serve, and they can't do it anymore. I see a lot of frustrated people that go down that path. So for what that's worth, that is a good thing to look at when you're looking at the entrepreneurship path. So I appreciate you sharing those thoughts.
Yeah.
Look, last question. What would you like to leave the listeners in terms of the best advice you can give the others that you haven't mentioned already that are watching this video and maybe have a year to go before they take the uniform off? What's anything else that you'd like to add to the box of great tips in this particular interview?
Yeah, I would say people want to help veterans. And so you have to be willing to ask for help. And I think it's ingrained in us to figure it out and be resilient and go and accomplish the mission, no matter what it takes. And we have this put your head down and grind mentality, and you really have to change that in this environment. And you have to be willing to reach out to people and say, hey, this is who I am. And I don't know much about your industry, but I'd really love a conversation or an opportunity to come learn something. And you'd be surprised how many people will open their door or give you some time in their office and help you understand what's going on. And that's really important. If you can't do that, it's going to be really hard to be successful, because you can't build a team. You can't really hone down your search. You can't really get prepared unless you're willing to engage and network and ask those questions. And so I would say that you really got to be prepared for that.
Yeah, great stuff, Will. I see that too. You're absolutely right, right? Our willingness to network and make ourselves maybe feel a little vulnerable when asking for help,
Right.
Kind of out of your comfort zone. Yeah, that's good stuff. I would agree with you. It's absolutely key to success. But look, in the spirit of time, we're going to put a cap on this. I really appreciate you taking the time again for the benefit of the people watching this. And I'll give you one more mulligan. You got anything else you want to mention before we go?
Yeah. I got to the character, family, fitness, and impact are that's what guides me every day. And those are underpinned by my faith. And I just want to at this point home that this organization is a faith-based organization, a service-based organization that wants to serve the community. And it's all about second mile service. It's a biblical quote talking about if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him for a second. And so those are key reasons and about my why, right? I talk about you got to figure out what your why is. And that's why I feel like this is the right place. And I was so certain about this industry and this organization and how it aligns with who I am. And then two quotes I live by. First one is don't fear failure, fear being successful in things that don't really matter. Okay. And that's attributable to a few people, one of which is Coach Tony Dungy. But that speaks to just who I think or who I am and what I'm about. And so there are going to be times if you're going out into entrepreneurship where it's going to be scary because there's financial, personal guarantees potentially involved and there's the unknown, but trust in yourself. And if it's the right gut feeling you get, then go for it. Okay. And the second one is truly worth doing will be hard. And we all know that from our service. But now don't let that go when you take the cloth of the nation off your right shoulder, because that's, served you well going forward. And it serves me too.
Yeah, great stuff. Glad I asked for that last chance. Good stuff there. We should have led with it. But anyway, I agree with you about the faith piece. And coincidentally, a lot of my clients I'm working with right now, fellow veterans, are very faithful people.
Yeah.
And I think there's a common denominator there. Anyway, thank you for your time today. And hopefully people, I'm sure, won't mind it if I offer to let you have an open door to other veterans that might want to tap your brain even more. I appreciate you making this video for that reason, because the guests tend to get a few calls. So I want to thank you for that.
LinkedIn, I would ask people just to reach out to me on LinkedIn and I will be responsive there.
Yeah, we'll put your LinkedIn link in the comments of this video, and I appreciate you doing that. But anyway, thanks. Have a great day, everybody. We appreciate the time. Thanks.